Thank you everyone for tuning in. We have a very special guest today, and we're going to be discussing the recent executive order on cryptocurrency, its impacts and implications. So I'd like to start off by thanking Mr. O'Leary for taking his time to be here today. We always appreciate your presence. Some know him as Mr. Wonderful, and he is no stranger to this sub. But we're here today with the legendary Kevin O'Leary. Kevin has many titles, including entrepreneur, author, politician, and many of him know him from Shark Tank. I think, does that cover everything, Kevin? You may have to unmute yourself.
Yes, that's great. And I'm also a chef. I just wanted to throw that in there.
And a chef. Awesome. Well, Kevin, you're a ruthless investor with a track record to back it. You like to invest in solving problems, and the retail consensus is that crypto is mostly speculation. Is that the reason you joined Team Crypto, or is there a problem that you see needed solving? And if so, what?
It has a speculative aspect to it in terms of its price volatility. There's no question about that, but that's not the way I look at it. I don't consider Bitcoin a coin. I consider it software. It's software. Ethereum is software. HBAR is software. Polygon software. Solana software. These are software development teams. In most cases, I've met them all, and I've invested in them. And they're trying to solve primarily financial services transactions and other issues, and do it more productively at a lower cost, more transparently with audit features. And so, to me, that's the productivity software development. And I don't know why, if I own, as I do, Microsoft and Alphabet and Google and everything else in software, why wouldn't I own this? And so, I understand because it's a nascent industry, that people are skeptical, but that's the time to be an investor. You want to get in before the institutions do, and right now they're not in it yet because the order has just started. But we've had some real milestones occur in the last 2 weeks. Number one is the Loomis bill that's going through a bipartisan committee in Congress, which is great. I had a chance to visit with the senators last week in Washington, a bipartisan committee, so that's pretty rare in Washington. And then, of course, like everybody else, I read the Biden executive order. And most of it was very good news because it basically says we've got to be competitive, we've got to regulate this, and which I think is good because it's going to get institutional capital. But there is one landmine sitting in the Biden executive order, and it's around climate. And that is a direct shot across the bow of Bitcoin miners.
Yeah, I think we just saw the EU voted against the de facto proof of work ban. And I've heard you mention the Norwegian model. Do you think that cryptocurrency will be a major driver for renewable energy sources in the future?
I do, but I think it's going to morph to the Norwegian model because let's talk about the situation we have now and what we have to get to over the next 2 years. So let's just speak about Bitcoin mining. Let's start there. And so what has been done for the last couple of years by major sovereign and institutions who are not allowed to own Bitcoin or Ethereum for that matter, is they have used the shares of public mining companies, primarily in the US, such as Hive, Hut 8, Marathon, Riot, and others, as a proxy. Because if you look at the share prices of those stocks, they really are very in sync with the price of Bitcoin. Bitcoin, gets cut in half, and so does the stock prices of these companies. So it's a good proxy, and they're of course allowed to own the shares. However, from the president's order and the new ESG mandates that are coming out of institutions like BlackRock, where they're starting to ask for audits, so that if you declare that you're carbon neutral, they're asking that you show that as along with your other audited statements each quarter. Proof that you're carbon neutral. And so most Bitcoin mining companies, although they try to become 100% ESG compliant by using, sources of energy like hydro, wind, and solar, are not. So maybe they're 50, 60% compliant. The other 40%, they simply buy carbon offsets or carbon credits. Well, that's where the model falls apart. The major audit firms are not going to sign off on carbon credits. There's no way to audit them. The tracking error is so huge. It's like saying I bought a piece of the Brazilian, rainforest, and therefore I'm carbon neutral. There's no way to prove that. And that's why, well, for me anyways, I can't speak for other investors. The minute I read that order, I sold every one of those stocks, and I won't be buying them back. They'll never survive an audit. And the more pressure they have, the worse it gets. So there's going to be a new model emerge. Capital will go to the Norwegian model. Now, the Norwegian model is completely different. It works this way. You find a site in a country like Norway or Quebec or Montana in the US, for example, or upstate New York for that matter, that has excess hydropower available, somewhere between 1 and 4 cents a kilowatt hour, and you form a contract. Either you buy it on spot pricing or you buy it in a locked in price, and you start to build your data center. You're not using any other source of electricity because that electricity, when it spills over the dam, is unused. So if the dam is only using, let's say, 20% of its potential, you're taking a portion of what's not used and converting it into value in the form of Bitcoin through a data center. And there is no need for a carbon audit because there's no carbon whatsoever. And so institutional capital will move away from, let's call them, for a better word, the dirty miners, to the clean miners. And so most of the deals I'm seeing now and I'm investing in are private at this point, like the Norwegian model. That's a private company that moved from upstate New York when the policy became unstable, moved their facilities to northern Norway. And what they've done is they've put up the facility in a village of 3,000 people. The mayor is a stakeholder in the facility. They're also taking the heat from the stacks and providing heat for a hydroponics facility that grows tomatoes. And they built a canning plant beside it to can those tomatoes. They also provide excess capacity to the local university and educational facility. And the stakeholders in the village support this construction because they're working there. These are high-paying jobs. They're building this out. And they started the target is 300 megawatt, but they'll build it bigger even. But that model, there's no reason that model can't go into upstate or up province Quebec. And that company is talking to Quebec as well as Montana, where you have the same situation. You've got to find that source of power that is not being used and converted. And then from that perspective, these new world miners, if you want to call them that, are providing a very important service. They're capturing the value of unused power into Bitcoin forever, which is a very good thing. And of course, they pay their taxes and they provide jobs to the local citizens of the communities they're building in. This is the new model, the Norwegian model. BitZero is not the only company. It's just the one that I invested in because it became available when it moved out of New York. But I'll invest in others that do the same thing. But what I'm not going to do is invest in data centers that end up in a situation where they're basically trying to tell you they're carbon neutral when there's no way to prove it by buying carbon credits. I think that's all BS, and it's going to be flushed out that way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to hear Bitcoin mining really creating kind of blossoming ecosystems, it sounds like, at least for the example you gave.